Mike Owens with Inside Fighting here, and it's always a pleasure to be joined by Vicente Luque, who returns to action UFC 310, facing Themba Gorimbo. Vicente, always a pleasure, my man. How are things with you today?
What's up, man? All good, all good. A pleasure to be here again, and more than anything, excited that I get to step in the octagon again in December. So yeah, it's been kind of a lot of uncertainty, but now I'm excited.
I imagine it must have been quite a frustrating year, especially with the fight initially being planned for August and then this being pushed back to December. So I imagine more than anything, you're just excited to get back in that octagon and
For
perform as you
sure.
do.
I mean, it is always hard when we have fights moved, rescheduled and then canceled. It's hard to just I don't know, deal with it maybe mentally,
Mm.
but it's incredible. I've been able to really just have really a great team around me, great people around me, and just really be at peace with all of this and work through it. Get better. So at the same time, I didn't get to fight in August, and everything moved to December. I feel like I would have loved to fight, but still, I feel like I'm improving and getting better, and it hasn't been time that I've wasted. I've actually gotten better, and that's great. That's something that I'm very excited to show on December.
I suppose the biggest storyline we must get into is obviously the opponent change. Originally, you were supposed to fight Nick Diaz. Can you give us a little bit of an idea of the timeline of when you realized this fight wasn't happening and the process of getting matched up with your next opponent?
Yeah, so it started with that video, that showed up of
Hmm.
him on the street, and it a lot of people were like saying a lot of things, and it is a crazy video when you see it, right? But at the same time, I was really concerned more than anything for Nick, and you never want to see somebody in that condition, especially after having the career he had, being the legend he is. I don't want to see a guy end up like that, and what I hope and pray for is that he can recover. He can, get back in track, whatever, that is. I don't know what that would be for him, but just be able to, I don't know, get things together and, take care of his family, take care of himself and be able to move on, and do anything that he plans on doing forward. And that's kind of when I started to realize, and Ali was talking to me, we got to start thinking on a plan B. What are we going to do? And that's when they were working on names. And Themba was a guy that had already mentioned, I think even before that, he had talked about if this fight,
You had, yeah.
for some reason, doesn't happen, I'm going to be ready. So we had that name. We had a few other names that went through, but Themba was the guy that really was down to fight. And for me, it's great because I've been working. I want to go in there. I
Mm.
want to fight. I have a great time to get ready for this fight as well. It's not like a super short notice change where I have to just fight with whatever tool. I can study. I can plan myself a little bit, and I have great guys. I
Mm.
have a great team here at Killcliff to get me ready for this guy and to get me ready for this fight. And most of the job has been done physically. I am great, and technically, I've been working on a lot of my things, so I'm ready. I'm ready. It's just certain adjustments and go in there and go to war.
You said something to me that was very interesting to me when we caught up in Manchester, and I hope you don't mind me sharing this, but you said
Yeah, for
that
sure.
one of the challenges of fight camp is that you're preparing for one guy for such a long time, and that's kind of the mental battle of is he preparing more than me? Is he preparing better than me? You've been preparing for Nick Diaz for probably 6 months now, or if not longer. You're now going to fight a different guy on, let's say, 3 weeks' notice. What is the process for you of getting ready and kind of adjusting your game plan and adjusting your style for your upcoming fight?
Yeah, the interesting thing is that I was getting ready for Nick to fight in August.
Mm.
After that got moved, and once that got canceled, what the UFC was saying like we're gonna get it rescheduled.
Mm.
So I didn't know when that was gonna happen, and it took about a month for them to really give me a date. And during that month, I was kind of like am I gonna fight him or are we gonna get another opponent? So because I didn't know, I decided, and with everybody, my coaches, we knew like the best thing right now is for you to focus on your game and train with everybody. So that's what I did. For a long time, I was training until I got the date and got into a training camp. So for me, a training camp is about 8 weeks.
Mm,
So after that fight was canceled, I just focused on training, my own abilities, getting better at my own game, strengthening myself, and training with all kinds of different guys. So taller guys, heavier guys, uh, shorter guys, southpaws, orthodox. So I was working with everybody. Then once I got to those 8 weeks, I focused again on southpaw, kind of like heavy boxing, good grappling, and was focused on that the skill set of Nick. But really, I trained for so long for this fight that I've trained everything.
mm,
So in a way, kind of like I feel like I am ready to fight anybody in any kind of game that there
mm.
is out there because that's what I was focusing on, just improving on my own abilities and being able to to fight in a dangerous way, which is always the best way I fought.
I love it. We've just seen a guy actually out of your gym, Killcliff FC, and Michael Chandler, who waited around for an opponent for a number of years in Conor McGregor, and I think he got to a point where he wanted to fight, and he's obviously gone come up short on Saturday night against Charles Oliveira. With the Nick fight, have you kind of moved past that in your mind, or do you have any interest in that fight if the UFC come to you next year or even further in the future and offer you that fight, or with the numerous bookings, have you moved past that in your mind?
I mean, right now I have I'm past that moment, especially because my plans are to move up in the division. So, this fight right now in December is that fight that gets me back into the mix. So, I'm obviously gonna stick to my plan, and that's what I believe on in the plan I have, and making that work. So we've moved past that, and I don't know. Right now, all I can do is hope for Nick's recovery in general, as a human being, that he can, get back to just being in a good spot. If he's gonna fight again or not, we don't know,
Mm.
but that's kind of what I can say about that.
How do you size up your next opponent? Think of Themba Gorimbo, and maybe what are some of the maybe similarities between him and Diaz's game, and maybe a couple of the key differences you look at.
I think they were both like long guys, that's kind of similar. Now Themba is an orthodox, which is I've been fighting so many southpaws. It's a long
Mm,
time I haven't fought an orthodox, so that's gonna be, I don't know. I cannot say if it's better or not. For me, I'm just used to both now. I've
mm,
trained so much with both kind of stances, but both guys are long. I think that's similar. Both guys can kind of mix it up, but I think in very different ways. I think that Themba is a guy that likes to, when he wrestles, he likes to be on top position and controlling. So that's, I see that he could do that very well. And he could strike, but also more versatile, not only focused on boxing, but he can kickbox a little, So I think what they have similar is that they can do everything. They could
mm,
strike or grapple, but the way they do it is very different. So that's where I really think that it's completely different fighters. Themba is very, very fast, very explosive. A guy that can that moves. Also, he's not so static, trying to box heavily, and he'll mix it up a lot. That's what I saw, especially from his last fight against Nico. And I think it was a very dominant fight by him. He fought very intelligent. So that's kind of what I'm getting ready for. A guy that, yeah, it's gonna go in there. He's still gonna try to maybe get the job done standing up, maybe take me down.
mm,
But mostly what I see is a guy that's gonna try to, let's say, try to take the fight wherever it's better for him and
mm,
try to get me in a place where I'm not comfortable. So what I'm trying to get ready, not only for this fight, but in general, that's what I feel like I've always done really well is be ready for everything. If we're gonna strike, if we're gonna grapple, I'm gonna be dangerous on both and have threats on both and and make sure that I dominate on both situations. Like, I want to make him shoot because he doesn't want to strike. I want him to get up with the ground because he doesn't want to be there down there
Mm.
grappling with me. Always keep him on that danger spot. So that's what I see for this fight. I think that it's something that I know that I could do very well, and that's what I've been training for.
I feel like, look, we talked about this multiple times, but I feel like from a casual fan's perspective, it would have been a massive win to get a Diaz brother on your record. But I actually feel from a hardcore fan's perspective, and maybe to move up to the top end of the division where you want to get to. I know the Themba is actually unranked at the moment, but I feel like you might actually get more credit or more kind of more your stock may go up, to use a phrase, over more over the win of over Themba than you might over Nick Diaz. Would you agree with that?
I do agree. I think that Nick was that kind of like a hype fight, a
Mm,
fight that was going to bring a lot of the eyes of the fans. But if we look at it in a MMA perspective, me beating Nick would be even like, and I'm not underestimating him. I mean, no matter how great he could be at that fight, it would be kind of like my obligation to go out there and beat him.
yes.
Just because of the moment that he is in and the moment I'm in.
Mm,
And, he could just show up there, the best Nick ever. Still, because of what happened in the past and the moment he is, it would be my obligation as the fighter, in the rankings right now, active right now, to go out there and beat him. Fans and all that is it's a whole different story. Now, when we go to this fight, is a fight where we have an up and coming fighter that has beaten some tough guys. That is has looked very good on his last fight. That is very hungry to get into that ranking.
mm,
And me, which I've been in the rankings for a long time. People know what I can do inside the octagon, and I'm trying to reestablish myself. So I think it's definitely that fight where when you look at it as a sport and as MMA and as rankings, it's definitely a fight that makes much more sense to move me forward and to show everybody, that I am ready to get back to that top of the division and test my skills and test my development. So for
mm.
sure, I think it's a fight that makes more sense in that way.
Talking about the top of the division, I have to get thoughts on the other rescheduled welterweight matchup on the card, which is Ian Garry going to step up and face Shavkat Rakhmonov in I think it's a 5 round co-main event, no interim title on the line, just a 5 round co-main. Just your thoughts on that fight, and were you surprised that it eventually ended up being Ian Garry who stepped in to face Shavkat on relative? I know he was booked at Tampa, but
Yeah.
technically short notice.
I mean, I wasn't surprised. I thought they were going to try to make other fights, but like I knew that they were trying to make Kamaru. I thought that fight could happen, but also could be difficult. Uh, I don't know how many fights Kamaru has left.
Mm,
I don't know if they try to renegotiate with him or not. If he wanted more money for that fight. So I'm sure that in these big fights like that, and I think that fight would be worth it, an interim title.
mm,
And I think those kind of fights is fights that are not easy to get done quickly. There is a lot of things involved. I'm sure that there would be pay-per-view and all that.
mm,
So it's things that I understand why that didn't move on. I can imagine it's a hard thing to negotiate so quickly. And the UFC always is gonna make a big fight happen, and I think this is a very big fight. Ian, has been looking great in his fights. Has been, he's a big prospect, undefeated, and Shavkat is a beast. He's a beast, and we bring that extra spice. They've trained together. Everybody knows they've trained together.
mm.
I've seen them. I've watched them train together, and I'm not gonna talk about that. I'll let you guys know about it in the fight, but I've trained with both of them. I know that both guys are tough. I do think, like in my opinion, from training with them, Shavkat is the more complete fighter from what I've experienced, and I haven't trained with Ian for a while now.
Mm,
Over I would say over a year and a half.
mm.
So for sure, when much over that, I was gonna fight him a
Of
year ago.
course, of
So
course.
maybe 2 years almost right
Mm,
now that I haven't trained with him. So he must have developed a lot, but I think it's an interesting fight. I think it brings that, that one of them is gonna lose. One of them is not gonna be undefeated anymore, and the next one, and the other guy is gonna go and fight for the title. So I think it's a fight that makes a lot of sense and just really brings that new blood into that top of the division and into the title picture. I don't think anybody has been in the title picture that we haven't that are so fresh in the UFC.
100%. I couldn't agree more. And I know you won't speak about the sparring specifically, but given you have trained with both guys and given you were planning to fight Ian and that fight obviously fell through, give me a key thing that each man needs to do in the fight to have success.
I think that for me, it's very clear from training with both what the strongest tool I would say that they have against each other. So
Okay.
for me, is Shavkat is a great striker, but he's a very very good grappler, very dangerous with submissions, in a way which I think is very superior to Ian. So for me, that would be the main weapon.
Mm,
Obviously, he can get in there and knock Ian out. He can get in there, and do a lot of things. But I think that that's the tool where I would say like he has the biggest advantage. Now, with that said, for me, Ian, between the two, both are great strikers. I think Ian is more creative and has a very good distance control and very good speed. So I would give him a slight edge in the striking, but with that said, I think that that's what he has to use. That's his strongest tool for that fight. I don't think that it's easy for him to go out there and like he has done with other guys, really completely dominate them in striking. I don't think he can do that with Shavkat, but I do think that that's where he could beat Shavkat,
mm,
defending takedowns and trying to outstrike Shavkat using his distance control and speed. But with that said, I think Shavkat is favorite.
mm.
That's why, like, by my analysis, they are pretty evenly matched in striking,
Yes.
a little bit better for Ian, but when you go to wrestling and grappling, I think that it's a big difference.
Mm.
Shavkat is really, really good at that. And I imagine Ian has been working. He was in Brazil for a long time, working with great jiu-jitsu guys. But Shavkat has so many years just wrestling and grappling, and he's really good at that. So I
Mm.
think that he for me, he's the favorite for this fight.
Well, turning the conversation back to yourself for one final question. You're obviously matched up at the end of December, the beginning of December, excuse me, but the end of the year. You're not looking past the victory next month, I'm sure. What are your goals for the next year, let's say for 2025? And have you almost plotted a course that you would like to take up the welterweight rankings to get you in that position that you want to get back to?
Man, it's so hard to plan ahead,
Yes.
and when I look back at my career, I think that planning ahead never is really what worked out.
Mm,
Plus, when I did not plan ahead, those were one of the best runs I had, I remember when in between 2018 and 2019, I had 5 fights in 13 months.
mm,
The only thing I had planned at that moment was I'm gonna stay ready because I don't know what's gonna happen.
mm,
And I was ready to take a whole bunch of fights. And I feel like whenever I'm active and at the same time I'm able to balance that out with good recovery and keeping my body healthy, that's when I perform the best. So what I can do, like what I can really plan for next year, is have myself like physically ready, mentally ready to have the most amount of fights I can because I
mm,
want to be active. I like to be active, and I think that that's a lot of that is going to be how I keep myself during the whole year to be able to just let my managers, let Ali know and him let the UFC know that, hey, Vicente is ready whenever you guys want to call him, maybe 2 months or a month and a half, give us a call. If it's a big fight, if it's that kind of fight that we see that makes sense to where we want to get in the division, let's do it. So that would be, that's my plan for next year. Be able to really stay active.
I love it. Well, Vicente, it is always a pleasure to catch up. I really, really do enjoy these chats every single time. Thank you for your time as always. It's great to see you back on this card, and I wish you the best of luck for the next fight.
Thank you. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. And let's go. Do some work in December.